have dinner at home. The story was written by Sam Hain, adapted for you by Aussie Vagabond. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Run. The classroom door creaked, and Professor Stern's silver-haired head appeared in the opening.
Merciful gods, colleague. Why are you still at work? Sunset is in 15 minutes and you still have to drive to the suburbs. Paul, my dear fellow, what a needless risk. Hurry now.
The aging dean, as always, looked imposing, dressed in a three-piece wool suit with bronze-toned skin and a proud aquiline nose.
Let me give you a lift. Get your things. My carriage will be here any minute.
His appearance and intensity caught me off guard. For a couple of seconds, I processed what I'd heard. I had been so deeply immersed in my book that being ripped from its reality so abruptly felt like getting the bends, the decompression sickness suffered by divers who surface from great depths too quickly. My voice sounded hollow and distracted, as if it hadn't quite caught up with me and remained partially in the watery depths. Thank you for the concern, Mr. Dean, but it's quite all right. I'll take public transit. I knew perfectly well that it would be a long and exhausting detour for the old man. I didn't want to subject this kind soul to unnecessary risk. The dean threw up his hands, clearly ready to launch into an argument with a burst of recklessness uncharacteristic of me. But I smiled, confident in my choice. Everything is fine, truly. I'll make the guarded run to the north sector. The elderly man looked at me intently, then at his watch, and deciding not to waste precious time in vain, he simply sighed.
Take care of yourself, Paul. Safe travels.
And to you, colleague, forgive me for causing you worry. The dean left the classroom, leaving behind a trail of old-world European sophistication with a subtle Eastern flair. His footsteps echoed in the hallway, while I, removing my glasses, rubbed my eyes. It was amazing how the reading had captivated me. Once again, I had lost track of time, but this time, it was utterly shameless. There were indeed about 15 minutes left until sunset. I left the classroom, locked the door, and headed to my office. The empty university corridors, illuminated by tall, pointed windows, were slowly turning fiery crimson. A lump formed in my throat. Anxiety was mounting steadily. Entering my office, I began rummaging through a cabinet full of junk, old folios, items confiscated from students that they themselves apparently had no use for. Trash that should have been thrown out long ago. Ah, there it is. I brought to light an old leather bag I had packed just in case I stayed late. I buckled on my officer's saber, slung the bag over my shoulder, and headed down to the lobby. My only companions were the hollow echo of my footsteps in dust motes sparkling in the light filtering through the stained glass. I was glad none of the students would see my combat look. A professor's jacket didn't go with an officer's saber at all. In the lobby, there was a heavy metallic clatter. Frau Martha, a broad-shouldered woman in her early 40s, was donning consecrated chainmail according to the watchwoman's protocol. She did it deftly and quickly, not caring if the noise bothered anyone, for all sensible people were already home behind 7 silver bolts, having salted their thresholds. In universities, sensible people usually reside. Inside the building, she was naturally in no danger, but the protocol, as they say, is written in blood. If it's in the security manual, you'd better comply. Frau Martha, I gave a friendly nod to the somber watchwoman. May I use the phone?
What you're still doing here, Professor?
The woman reached into a locker and, grabbing the phone, brought it to the window of her booth, jerking the cord every now and then so it wouldn't catch on the furniture. I lost track of time reading. I smiled sheepishly, knowing the watchwoman wouldn't consider that a reason worthy of risking one's life. She once went into the night fog to save her nephew from the outlying farms. She failed, but still.
Reading, he says.
The woman grunted and set the phone by the window.
You gotta go all the way to Green Hills, past the city line. That's just...
It's only 20 minutes by bus, Frau Martha, don't over-dramatize. A minor inconvenience, nothing more. My tongue wove social patterns that calmed no one present, while my fingers dialed the digits of my home number on the wheel.
Paul, is that you?
The best sound in the world came from the receiver. My wife's voice. My heart skipped a beat, and confidence surged instantly. It was as if I could smell freshly brewed coffee and pastries. Her hair. The bunch of lavender hanging in the hallway. The lump in my throat grew, and I had to clear my throat to speak firmly and quickly. Leonora, my soul, forgive me. I stayed late. Everything is fine. I'm heading to the stop now to catch the bus and pay extra for the armed convoy. I'll be home in 40 minutes. Leonora, like me a moment ago, was caught off guard by my momentum.
Well, if you say so.
Yes, dear, don't worry. I've got my bag. Have some tea ready for me when I get back, if you would. I'll be having dinner at home, I promise.
All right, Paul. Safe travels.
Thanks. See you soon. I hung up, full of resolve to get home no matter what. But the seasoned caretaker cracked my confidence like a hazelnut.
Guarded runs are canceled.
What? I was stunned. I just took one last week.
Sent the folks from the Magistrate Guard to the far vineyards, to St. Peter's Commune. Been at it 4 days now. My son-in-law's in the militia, so he's been telling me. Hurry up, Professor.
Chapter 2. A ticket to Green Hills, the last trip. I nodded nervously, and clutching the hilt of my belted saber, bolted out onto the university steps. In the square before the building, an old groundskeeper was sweeping the pavement. The broom and dustpan's haul consisted of a few stray leaves, some popsicle sticks, and a wrapper from a forest fairy caramel. Sprinting down the stairs, I called out to the old man, "Mr. Abdel, what are you doing? It's getting dark." The groundskeeper turned, squinting his already narrow eyes, and gave a wide smile.
Sweep now, then tomorrow I wake up later, can walk with battery longer. And you? Why are you still here?
I lost track of time reading. With every excuse I made, I felt more foolish. I completely lost track of the hour.
Hurry then.
The groundskeeper didn't try to stall me or judge.
If you miss bus, you can stay in my shed.
"Thank you, Mr. Abdel," I shouted, running past. The square was desolate, the streets entirely empty. The wind chased a newspaper page. No doubt it was making a run for it from the groundskeeper. I dashed toward the bus station with all my might, trying to cut corners wherever possible. Forgetting my academic degree and my dignity, I climbed over fences separating the courtyards of residential blocks and dashed across lifeless roads in forbidden places. Once, a gendarmerie car sped past me. A mustachioed officer in a metal helmet frowned and wagged a finger at me as if scolding a wayward youth. In essence, my behavior was exactly that of such a person. A foolish professor, a foolish book, a foolish mistake. A few more turns, and gasping for breath and shivering with anxiety, I burst onto the square where the bus station was located. Over one of the stops, a green flag fluttered with the words, "Express Departure." Exactly the route for Green Hills, the town where I lived. A line of several people had formed at the stop, which made me feel calmer. It was a selfish joy, knowing I wasn't the only one foolish and short-sighted. Look, these people were also in danger for some reason or another. I felt instantly ashamed of my schadenfreude. Approaching the stop, flushed from the run, I offered a greeting. The people responded with grim nods, occupied with their own dark thoughts. I'd bet everyone was thinking, will we make it home, or will something be making a meal of us? I certainly hoped for the former. Who's last, ladies and gentlemen? A pregnant girl sitting on a bench a little way off smiled at me shyly.
You'll be after me.
Huffing and creaking, an old bus pulled up to the stop. The driver and the conductor, large men encased in thick, rusting armor with crude, welded patches, looked like clumsy robots from a movie. They walked around the vehicle, closing the windows with iron shutters featuring narrow slits. The workers reeked of sweat and machine oil even from a distance. No wonder, having to walk in that kind of uniform from dawn till dusk. The men were switching the vehicle into high-security night mode. Everyone knew this took time, and that it was vital. My fellow sufferers and I watched the final strokes of the sunset with heavy hearts. The sun slipped below the horizon, and a swift twilight began. I hadn't been to this station in a long time. Being usually organized and punctual, I rarely ran late, and so I was no regular on the night runs. My colleague, Timothy, usually gave me a lift to Green Hills, and I'd take the commuter train back. Its station was on the edge of town, a 20-minute walk. A grocery shop nearby still had its lights on. That was a rarity, but if the owner lived in the same building or right above the shop, he could afford such a luxury. I remembered promising Leonora I'd buy some apples. She wanted to bake an apple cake and make some fresh juice. The workers were fumbling with the bus's protective plates calmly and unhurriedly, instilling a sense of security in the passengers. There was still time. I headed toward the shop. It was located nearby, just past a small square. Although, how could you call a 5 or 6 square meter patch of land a square? A few chestnut trees and a couple of benches. Crossing the green zone, I noticed an unusual citizen. A cat was sitting under an elderberry bush. A very serious gray lad followed me with his yellow eyes. For some reason, I was convinced of his male gender, though I possessed no evidence to prove it. It had been a while since I'd seen any stray animals. On the night streets, they are the first victims of the unclean. And while all stray dogs had been quickly drafted into service by the gendarmerie, the cats, due to their total untamability, remained on their own. The shop met me with coolness and the puzzled gaze of the shopkeeper, a short, stocky Greek man. He had already finished counting the day's take, judging by the scribbled-on sheet of paper and the heavy cash register, and was putting on a light jacket.
Your stomach called you late, my friend. I'm closing up already.
I won't keep you. If you please, a kilogram of apples and 100 grams of ham. I hesitantly held out my mesh bag. The Greek nodded, deeming the set of products acceptable, took the bag, and as he picked out large red apples, he chuckled.
100 grams of ham. What's that for? One bite and it's gone.
I saw a cat in the square. I need to feed him. The man shot me a quick look but said nothing. He weighed the fruit in my bag and added a small pitcher of milk and a solid piece of meat, thoughtfully cut into small cubes and wrapped in paper.
On the house, sir. Give the cat my regards. Hurry home now.
I nodded gratefully and stepped outside. The cat was sitting in the same spot, watching my approach. I unwrapped the paper with the treat and laid it out before him. The animal didn't budge. Pouring the milk into a jar lid lying nearby, I stepped aside. The cat, satisfied that all the offerings were laid out and the meddlesome human had retreated to a distance befitting his station, began to dine regally. If all went well and I found myself home tonight, I would likely eat much less gracefully. And I'm a professor, for heaven's sake. The bus at the station honked, and I hurried to the stop. A tall conductor stood by the door, punching the tickets presented by the passengers. The joints of his armor creaked mournfully with his measured arm movements. A mother with 2 school-aged children, 3 farmers, a man in a checkered jacket, and that same pregnant girl I was behind in line.
Where's your rifle?
A farmer called out loudly to the conductor.
No rifle. Got a flare.
From under the helmet's visor, the voice poured out like thick molasses. The man showcased a length of pipe resting in a holster welded to his thigh plate. The pipe smoked slightly, and occasionally spat out sparks. It was an old design from the start of the war. They'd adopted it nearly 200 years ago and stopped making them half a century back. Can't say it's completely useless, but there's better hardware out there now. A flare. The people whispered and traded frightened glances. Where are the rifles then? Where's the firearms? Or the enchanted ones?
All the rifles went to the magistrate guard. They need 'em more.
The conductor grunted, punching another handed-over ticket.
You heard about St. Peter's Commune, ain't you?
What are y'all so spooked for?
The driver leaned halfway out of his cab, a man with jauntily curled mustaches.
Everything's gonna be just fine. We've been hauling folks back and forth plenty and ain't nothing ever happened.
Shush, old man, you'll jinx us.
The conductor barked at his partner, but the driver just gave the schoolboys an encouraging wink and disappeared back into his cab. The armored panels with rebar grates slid shut with a screech. The cab was under solid protection. On the bars, the symbols of protective wards glowed ever so slightly. The passengers loaded into the bus and took their seats. The conductor, huffing from the effort, slid the thick cast iron plate shut, closing the bus's entrance. The vehicle tilted perceptibly, but the stabilizers kicked in, and it slowly leveled out.
Reminding you, we're heading to Green Hills. One stop only, the final one. When we stop at the gates, that is not a stop. You cannot get off. We will periodically exceed the speed limit according to Amendment 29.6, 3B regarding night runs.
The man tonelessly mumbled the memorized text about special rules for night driving and the passenger's duty to assist in case of situations. I settled in by a viewing slit in the armor plating. I don't know why. I'd been on night runs a couple of times, but always guarded ones, with armed soldiers and machine guns on the roof. I'd felt safe then, and decided to tingle my nerves by watching what was out there beyond the window. Most of the time it was just roadside bushes in the moonlight. But at one turn, I suddenly locked eyes with two dead men. They stood a little way from the road in relaxed poses, like peasants smoking after a hay harvest. People like any other, just pale. But locking eyes with one of them, I lost my sleep for a week. A wild, primal terror took hold of me. That creature was not human. Something alien, wearing a rotting suit and using a dead body as a spacesuit. I broke out in goosebumps and pinched myself hard. The last thing I needed was to wind myself up. The bus swayed rhythmically. We were driving through the deserted streets, and I stared into the bright, barred windows of residential houses. There, people in comfort and safety went about their business. Ugh, curse that book. But my conscience immediately stung me. The book was good. I had immersed myself in the story of brave pioneers setting out on an expedition. The romance of distant travels, descriptions of harsh northern forests, the feats of the iron spirit of the Western man. The bus slowed and stopped at the city gates. The city was enclosed by a wall, in some places a palisade of hewn logs with runes, in others concrete blocks. Here, at the exit, rose a wall twice the height of a man, built of white stone. On the watchtowers, soldiers stood their shift. Engineers were turning on searchlights. The driver went to the guardhouse to fill out papers, arguing loudly with a serviceman, while my gaze wandered in search of a distraction. By the guardhouse sat a small shrine, a green patch of grass in a sea of concrete. Several ancient idols frowned with oak brows from the gloom between the trees. Fierce Taranis, mighty Cernunnos, and the face of a forgotten protector of the roads. The idol's lips glistened with freshly applied blood. They were fed before every sunset. Perhaps they would have mercy and grant us a safe passage. The driver returned and started the engine. The heavy gates creaked, and the sergeant's loud commands rang out. The bus left the city territory, and I gripped my leather bag with one hand and my saber with the other. The bus jolted along as it grew darker outside. The farmers were acting tough, emboldening each other with jokes, while the schoolboy's mother whispered protective prayers. The driver's voice rang out.
Don't you worry, folks. We'll be passing St. Peter's Commune shortly. There's a battalion of the Magistrate Guard stationed there, a serious force. They inspect the farms and watch the road. It's safe here.
The conductor glanced at the farmer who had recently asked about weapons.
One of M's likely got my rifle too.
People settled on the left side of the bus near the windows, ready to press against the viewing slits to see the armed soldiers, the city's defenders. Shortly, stretched into 20 minutes, and I had never listened so intently to the steady purr of the engine.
There are the gates.
The driver shouted into the cabin. The bus slowly rounded a bend, and those brave enough to look out saw a grim landscape lit by the moon and bright stars. Several military trucks were parked in a row. The tall palisade of the commune enclosed the entire perimeter of the settlement. High, sturdy gates stood wide open, and not a single person, no light, no movement, not a soul. The driver, realizing there were no sentries on the road or guards at the gates, hit the gas. The bus lurched, picking up speed very, very slowly. Dark silhouettes of trees flashed past the window, but people weren't looking outside anymore. They tried not to. Cold and anxiety flooded the space. The farmers fidgeted with their axes and exchanged grim looks.
Duke!
A frantic cry came from the cab. The conductor stood up from his seat and poked his head into the driver's cabin. They argued in low voices for a moment, and the bus began to slow down. "Hey! Hey! What's this all of a sudden?" the passengers clamored.
Quiet. Stopping according to protocol. Wounded soldier on the road.
The conductor hurriedly lit the sensor. His voice sounded confident, but it cracked at the end.
I'm going out to get him and I'll be back. Then we move on.
"You're risking civilian lives," the man in the checkered jacket protested. "You're supposed to ensure our safety."
The conductor fanned the flame, and thick smoke billowed from the metal ball on the chain.
According to protocol.
The man in armor thundered.
If you want to dispute the commissariat's decisions, write a complaint.
No one wanted to dispute the commissariat's decisions. The conductor pulled the lever with effort. The mechanism groaned. A blast of steam shot out somewhere, and the air smelled of moisture and machine oil.
Will you be able to handle it alone?
The pregnant girl asked quietly. The conductor froze on the bus steps, sensor in one hand, the sparking flare pipe in the other. I'll help. The words came from somewhere inside me. My voice felt foreign, and the offer seemed idiotic. The passengers looked at me with pity. The conductor nodded silently and stepped outside. I drew my saber and followed him. My legs moved like mechanical joints, and I could hardly process reality. According to protocol, anyone with medical knowledge or skills is obligated to assist a wounded soldier. Being a university employee, I, of course, possessed them. The night air was fresh, filled with the scent of meadow herbs. Heat and the smell of gasoline radiated from the bus's siding. The conductor, his iron uniform creaking softly, moved slowly toward the figure lying on the shoulder. The outline of a human silhouette could be made out, as could the green uniform. It was definitely a soldier. I walked at a distance from the conductor thinking, why did the bus stop so far away? Why not pull up right next to him, reach out, pull the man inside, and that's it? The coward in me was short-sighted. Of course, no one was sure if this was a real human, so the conductor followed protocol. He stopped 10 paces from the body and began to swing the sensor. A bass-heavy chant of an old Latin prayer rose from his iron-clad body, growing in volume. The soldier's body stirred. He raised his head, a man in his 30s, with terrible wounds on his cheek and on his back. I'm human. Human, he whispered feebly, and likely realizing that any pleas would be in vain, he joined in the prayer. The conductor strode toward the wounded man and began sensing him, while I, circling from the other side, knelt down and examined the wounds. The situation was bad, but there was a chance. I pulled a first aid kit, a bottle of blessed water, and a grenade from my bag, laid them out beside me, and began applying stitches to the wounds that needed closing most urgently. The smoke from the sensor, besides its primary cleansing function, also had an analgesic effect, so I worked quickly and didn't worry about the wounded man's comfort. He was asleep. Meanwhile, the bus pulled closer, and the farmers poured out. Nervous and on edge, with axes at the ready, they stared into the roadside bushes. The conductor finished his prayer and began quietly instructing the farmers on how to carry the wounded man. I had literally a couple of stitches left to do when I heard a rustle behind my back. Despite my academic title, I didn't think for long. The grenade was in my hand with the same speed with which I subsequently parted with it, tossing it over my shoulder without even looking back. I lunged over the wounded soldier. Behind us, there was a roar, and the air became hot, dense, and viscous. Someone grabbed me and dragged me along. My legs moved on their own and my hands searched for a handhold. Finally, they found a rail. I slumped onto a bus seat and someone jostled my shoulder. One of the men carrying the soldier had accidentally bumped into me. A crash. The conductor was closing the heavy door. Someone was screaming, and it seemed someone was laughing. I wiped the damp, unpleasant sweat from my forehead. My palm was covered in blood. Chapter 3. The Grey-Clad Protector. The Promise Kept. I was shaken awake just as we were approaching the settlement. The woman, the mother of the schoolboys, was gently tugging at my shoulder.
Sir, wake up, we're almost there.
I forced my eyes open, struggling to separate reality from what I'd dreamed. I touched my head and felt a bandage across my forehead.
It's nothing serious, just a cut. I bandaged you up, but you'd better see a doctor. I'm no expert.
The woman shrugged sheepishly. She was barely holding back a smile of relief. She felt awkward smiling next to the two grim farmers. Can you tell me what happened? I only remember the grenade going off.
A ghoul was sneaking up on you.
The conductor grunted.
I only turned my head because of a rustle, and next thing I see, grenades already flying. Caught it right with his face. He did. Bang! His whole swine snout went flying in every direction. But two more jumped out of the bushes right away. I let him have it with the flare, spooked him a bit, and the boys dragged you and the soldier into the bus. Only couldn't save Walter. Another tick was sitting on the roof. Walter was stepping in, just getting on the ledge, when the ghoul grabs him by the head and bolts into the woods. That was that. We drove on. Protocol, you know.
I glanced around at the passengers. There was one less farmer now, so that must have been Walter. "My condolences," I muttered hoarsely. They gave a grim nod in response. The bus, creaking cheerfully, rolled through the lit streets of Green Hills. Here, one could already spot machine gun nests and patrols on the roadsides. Ahead, the gates and the high palisade loomed. I remembered the smell of pine resin from those logs, the smell of safety. At the gates, the bus stopped, and the driver reported to the sentry. The guards inspected the vehicle from wheels to roof and took our wounded find. Past the gates, the doors opened, letting us out to enjoy the time the gods had granted us. Passengers scattered in different directions. The pregnant girl was met by men, likely her husband and friends. An old man awaited the woman with the schoolboys. Those waiting scolded those they awaited. "Why were you late? Why did you risk it?" Scolding with love, not in earnest. I hurried home. I'd lost my bag and my saber, but I didn't regret them. I was just glad to be alive. At least I hadn't forgotten the mesh bag of apples. I was only 2 blocks from home. I walked down the street, shamelessly staring into the bright windows of the houses. People drinking tea in the warmth, reading books, laughing. Safe. I'll remember this forever. I'm never being late again. I was practically spitting out the accumulated nerves and fear. I was already approaching my house when I noticed a familiar acquaintance by the trash bins. The gray cat I'd fed at the shop. Of course, it couldn't have been the same one, but it looked very similar. I wanted to step closer, but he crouched to the ground and hissed fiercely. Obviously, this fellow wasn't looking for friends. I bypassed him in a wide arc. Something clattered inside the bin. The gray one, meanwhile, continued to hiss frantically, approaching me as if defending his territory. Or warning me? In gratitude for the treat? A chill ran down my spine. No, it can't be. A bald, lumpy head covered in gray, flabby skin peeked out from the bin. Faint embers flickered deep within the empty eye sockets. In the next second, the back of my head hit the asphalt, and the ghoul pinned me down with his unexpectedly heavy and cold body. Icy palms squeezed my neck. I put my hands up in defense, and the creature began to feast on my left one with relish. The cat lunged at the ghoul's face with a hiss, and the monster did what I had desperately dreamed of doing. It let out a loud howl of pain. The grip loosened. The ghoul began trying to tear the cat off. "Help! Help!" I wheezed through my crushed throat. But the ghoul's howl was certainly heard by many. A shot rang out, and the creature lost an arm. On a third-floor balcony, an old man in a nightshirt was reloading an old Mauser and fiercely cursing the whole devilish brood. A patrol whistle blew nearby. The creature threw the cat aside and decided it had time for a quick snack before someone serious arrived. Another indistinguishable movement, a gray blur, and its teeth tore into my neck. I felt every fiber of its vile fangs ripping away pieces of what was, in a sense, also me. Armed men ran out of the houses. The old man on the balcony continued his barrage. The ghoul let go of me and howled again. This time the cat had decided to scalp the enemy. And surprisingly, he was succeeding. He shredded the monster, sending scraps of gray, deathly skin flying. The ghoul spun like a top, trying to shake the animal off. Shots rang out, and several streaks of light pierced the monster's body with a hiss. The ghoul fell to the asphalt, twitching. Men ran to the bins from all sides. They dragged me to the porch, while the guard patrol surrounded the ghoul. Men encased in heavy armor practically dismembered the creature's body. The foul smell of ammonia and the sweetish smoke of burning herbs brought me out of my trance. I sat bandaged on a bench by my porch, Leonora fussing over me while neighbors talked shop, discussing what had happened. An inspector from the magistrate knelt in front of me. "How are you, Paul?" "Hard to say." "Alive. That's good enough." I tried to smile, but the bandages were tight across my face. I was bare-chested. The rags that were once my jacket and shirt lay nearby like a bloody pancake. By the trash bins, A heap of rotting flesh, bone fragments, and teeth was festering. What used to be a ghoul. A cleric stood by the remains, a man in a heavy robe with tin plates sewn onto it, stamped with charms. He swung a censer and muttered cleansing prayers. On the balcony, the old man who had so successfully shot off the creature's arm was calling down the wrath of Taranis upon the earth.
Forgive me, Professor. Any situation of this nature is my personal failure. I assure you, all walls are being checked for breaches as we speak, and the sewers are being inspected.
Oh, enough, Inspector. These things get in everywhere. It's my own fault for being without a weapon or a whistle. The officer gave a non-committal nod, wrote something down, and left. The cleric whispered over my wounds. The pain receded. It would heal on its own from here. I was let go home. Dinner was out of the question. I lay on the bed and just soaked in the domestic comfort, the smells, the warmth, the life. Leonora cried all night, alternately scolding me and showering me with kisses. I didn't defend myself from either. I just quietly rejoiced that I was falling asleep at home with my wife in bed, and not growing cold on the street, torn by a nightmare. I woke up at dawn to the birds chirping. In the kitchen, a frying pan was hissing, the smell of eggs and ham wafting through. A warm bundle was curled up by my shoulder, the gray cat, my savior from yesterday, and I suppose, our new pet. A storm was gathering outside. Taranis had answered the old man's prayers. Soon, torrents of water from the heavens would wash away the blood staining the asphalt. Soon, lightning bolts would fly from the sky, and each would find the rotten heart of an undead creature. Every flash of lightning would mean the world was cleansed of one more monster. Well, my bloodthirsty cookies, if this story sent a chill down your spine, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next run into the dark. Stay under the protection of the runes and see you soon.